In public, Hollywood stars' families always seemed perfect and happy, but that was only a mask. The truth is, behind the glittering lights were unbelievable tragedies. A starlet once caught in bed with her husband's own son, a matinee idol, who fathered a secret child hidden under the label of adoption, and even silver screen legends who built entire fake families to conceal forbidden sexual lives. Right now, here are the 24 most shocking family secrets that Hollywood stars tried to bury for decades. And without doubt, the further we go, the more jaw-dropping the truths become. 1. Gloria Graham, the starlet who slept with her husband's son. Hollywood in the 1950s was used to scandals, but Gloria Graham's affair stunned the film capital. The Oscar-winning actress of The Bad and the Beautiful was exposed for having a relationship with Tony Ray, the stepson of director Nicholas Ray. The shock began in 1951 when Nicholas suddenly returned to their Beverly Hills mansion on Sunset Boulevard. On the second floor, he stumbled upon a scene he could never erase: his young wife and his own son together in a compromising position. The story spread quickly in industry circles. MGM and RKO reportedly paid tens of thousands of dollars to silence tabloids. Nicholas Ray filed for divorce, but Gloria's troubles didn't stop. In 1960, she and Tony Ray secretly married in Tijuana, Mexico, with only a handful of friends as witnesses. When the matter resurfaced during a custody trial in 1962, the Los Angeles Examiner screamed with the headline, "One of the worst stains in Hollywood history." Gloria's career collapsed overnight. From an A-list star, she ended up in England performing in Liverpool and Brighton theaters with only a few hundred seats. Years later, when she tried to return to the US, the press still labeled her the woman who broke the taboo. Gloria Graham proved that fame could vanish in a single night. But her downfall still looked lighter compared to the stolen childhood of Hollywood's love goddess Rita Hayworth. 2. Rita Hayworth, the beauty icon controlled sickeningly by her father from age 12. Rita Hayworth was the screen goddess of the 1940s, star of Gilda, hailed in magazines as the love goddess. But behind the dazzling image lay a haunted childhood. Her father, Eduardo Cancino, a Spanish dancer, used his daughter as a money-making tool from the time she was just 12. He forced Rita to tour nightclubs from Tijuana, Mexico to Las Vegas, making her perform provocative dances to lure customers. Witnesses at Agua Caliente recalled a frail young girl under glaring lights, eyes red from exhaustion, yet still forced by her father to go on. Eduardo's control crossed the line of fatherhood. Rita grew up in a fog of fear and numbness. The New York Times noted that Rita rarely smiled genuinely outside of film sets, while gossip columnist Luella Parsons wrote that Hayworth shines on screen but always looks as if she's running away in real life. After 5 marriages from genius Orson Welles to Prince Ali Khan, she never found happiness. Her most haunting confession echoed across magazines. "They go to bed with Gilda and wake up with me." If Gloria Graham was ruined by a forbidden love, Rita Hayworth spent her life trapped in an invisible cage built by her father. But there was also a star who faced death itself inside her own home, Clara Bow, Hollywood's very first it girl. 3. Clara Bow, nearly murdered by her mother and scarred by her father's dark shadow. Clara Bow, the face of 1920s glamour, immortalized the phrase it girl. But her early life was filled with horror. Born in Brooklyn's slums, she lived with a mother plagued by mental illness. In 1922, in their shabby apartment on Prospect Place, Sarah Bow pressed a knife to her daughter's throat, intent on ending it all. Clara's scream echoed into the street, drawing neighbors who rushed in just in time. Brooklyn police filed a report, but the family buried it. Her father, Robert Bow, drowned in alcohol and gambling, frequently abusive. In Hollywood, rumors spread that he even crossed forbidden lines with Clara. Though never confirmed, she carried those wounds for life. Off-screen, she battled insomnia and relied on sedatives. In Photoplay and Motion Picture magazine, she still shone radiant and alluring. In 1931, at just 26, she abruptly retired. Hollywood lost a firework, bright but tragically short-lived. When that firework faded, the sky grew darker, and in the shadows were lies carefully constructed from the start. One such case was Merle Oberon, whose bloodline and identity were rewritten to turn a mixed-race girl into Hollywood's white goddess. 4. Merle Oberon, hiding her origins from a stepfather-child relationship. In 1939, Merle Oberon rose to stardom with Wuthering Heights. The British press praised her as the Tasmanian Rose, while MGM fabricated records claiming she was born into nobility in Hobart. They chose Tasmania because its birth records had been destroyed in a fire, making verification impossible. But the truth lay in Bombay, India, where Merle was born in 1911. Her mother was just 12 years old, and her father was her stepfather. To conceal the scandal, she was raised believing her grandmother was her mother, while her real mother was passed off as her sister. When she arrived in London in 1928, Oberon was forced to lighten her skin and avoid strong lights on set to hide her complexion. For years, Hollywood believed the Tasmanian tale. Even her husband, director Alexander Korda, was unaware. Merle lived in constant fear of exposure. She refused to return to India or answer questions about her past. Only after her death in 1979 was her Bombay birth certificate uncovered, exposing the deception. A mixed-race star had spent her life denying herself all to fit Hollywood's whitewashed dream. If Merle Oberon was haunted by her origins, Charlie Chaplin shook Hollywood with another kind of scandal, a marriage to a 16-year-old girl, a desperate escape from the law. 5. Charlie Chaplin forced into marrying a 16-year-old to avoid prison. In 1924, Hollywood was entering its golden age, but nothing shocked the public more than Charlie Chaplin's affair. At 35, while filming The Gold Rush in Los Angeles, Chaplin secretly pursued Lita Gray, a 16-year-old co-star. The affair spiraled when Lita became pregnant. Under California law, Chaplin could have faced prison for relations with a minor. In panic, Chaplin's team arranged a lightning trip to Mexico. There, in a small church in Agua Prieta, the couple quietly wed, no family, no friends. United Artists suppressed the press, but the story leaked, becoming an indelible stain. The scandal exploded in 1927 when Lita filed for divorce, submitting a 50-page complaint accusing Chaplin of infidelity with Ziegfeld Follies, dancers' emotional abuse, and treating his wife and children as burdens. The Los Angeles Times called it the dirtiest divorce in Hollywood history. Though Chaplin went on to make masterpieces like City Lights and Modern Times, the scandal forever shadowed him. From comic genius, he became branded as a womanizer, his name never fully cleansed. While Chaplin scrambled to escape the law with a hasty marriage, Joan Crawford fell to the pen of her own adopted daughter, turning an icon into the face of cruelty. 6. Joan Crawford exposed as a monster mother in Mommy Dearest. Joan Crawford was once hailed as Hollywood's queen. When she died in 1977, Variety and the Los Angeles Times praised her as an eternal screen icon. But a year later, her image cracked. Christina Crawford, her adopted daughter, released Mommy Dearest, a bombshell that shook Hollywood. Christina described a childhood like military camp beatings, endless chores, and above all, the chilling scene where Joan, enraged over a wire hanger, forced her daughter to clean out closets until she sobbed. The phrase "no wire hangers" became infamous, replayed in TV theater and satire across America. In 1981, Hollywood adapted it into the film Mommy Dearest, with Faye Dunaway portraying Joan as a tyrant. At the same time, reporters dug into Joan's ties with Georgia Tann, who ran a notorious child trafficking adoption ring in Tennessee. All 4 of Crawford's adopted children came from Tann's network. Though proof Joan knew the truth was lacking, the connection horrified audiences. Crawford's glory crumbled not because of a failed role, but because her daughter painted her as a monstrous mother. While Hollywood still argued, another bombshell destroyed America's faith, this time from Bing Crosby, the voice of Christmas. 7. Bing Crosby. America's Santa, exposed by his sons for whip beatings. Every Christmas, Bing Crosby's White Christmas filled American homes, the soundtrack of warmth and family. On screen, he played kind priests winning hearts. But in 1983, Gary Crosby, his eldest son, detonated the myth with his memoir, Going My Own Way. Gary revealed a childhood of beatings with leather straps. Each week, their father weighed them, punishing any who gained weight with brutal whippings. Brothers Dennis and Lindsay confirmed the memories, recalling a childhood of fear. Lindsay's depression ended in suicide in 1989, leaving a note hinting at the family's darkness. The revelations turned Crosby from America's Santa into a double-faced tyrant. While some relatives denied it, the siblings' divided voices chilled the public. From then on, whenever White Christmas played, it carried not just nostalgia, but echoes of terror. If Joan Crawford was toppled by her daughter's book, Bing Crosby broke America's heart. And then came another disgrace so great that an entire family fled town, the early shame of Judy Garland. 8. Judy Garland family forced to flee after her father's scandal with young men. Before making history as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, 1939, Judy Garland bore a heavy family secret. In 1926, at age 4, her family suddenly fled their town of Grand Rapids, Minnesota, under cover of night. Locals were told they were chasing new opportunities in California, but whispers spread Frank Gum. Judy's father was rumored to have relationships with local teenage boys. In conservative 1920s America, such rumors were social death. The Gums fled west, where MGM discovered Judy's extraordinary voice and packaged her as the perfect American girl. But her career foundation was built on a bitter escape. In her memories, Judy still spoke of her father lovingly as her artistic inspiration. yet the scandal's shadow lingered, feeding her fragility. Her early death at 47 only deepened the tragedy rooted in childhood. Judy Garland lived with that scar forever. But Hollywood would soon witness another twisted family truth: Jack Nicholson, the rebel star of the 1970s, learning that his sister was really his mother. 9. Jack Nicholson. 37 years living under a lie. After iconic roles from The Madman in The Shining 1980 to the infamous Joker, Jack Nicholson faced a personal revelation straight out of a screenplay. Born in 1937 in New Jersey, Jack grew up believing Ethel May, a strict yet kind woman, was his mother. June, the young woman often absent for work, he thought of as his sister. For 37 years, Nicholson lived under this belief, grateful to them both. Everything changed in 1974 when a Time magazine reporter researched Nicholson for a profile after Chinatown. Digging into records, the journalist discovered June was in fact Jack's mother, while Ethel May was his grandmother. The cruelest twist: both women had already died, leaving Jack no one to confront. Outwardly, Nicholson told the press he wasn't traumatized, but friends said he changed, turning Wilder diving into endless Hollywood Hills parties, as if rebellion could mask the pain. Perhaps that late unmasked family lie fueled the reckless, volatile energy that made Nicholson both brilliant and notorious. Hollywood reeled, but Nicholson wasn't alone. Just a few years later, America's music world was rocked when Bobby Darin, a teen idol, learned the same kind of secret. 10. Bobby Darin discovering his mother was really his sister. Bobby Darin, golden voice of hits like Mac the Knife and Dream Lover, enchanted 1950s youth. But behind the fame lay a shocking family truth. Raised in the Bronx, he believed Polly was his mother, and Nina, the lively young woman at home, was simply his sister. In the late 1960s, while preparing for a Las Vegas show, Darin finally learned the truth: Nina was his real mother, Polly, his grandmother. The revelation devastated him. Born with a weak heart, Darin already lived with mortality looming. The family secret crushed him, driving him from pop stardom into melancholic folk songs and protest music. Friends recalled him weeping backstage in his final years, lamenting that his life had been a staged play. In 1973, Darin died during heart surgery at only 37, leaving fans in shock. From teen idol to tragic symbol, his downfall was rooted in a truth revealed too late. If Bobby Darin collapsed under a family lie, Ingrid Bergman, the angel of Casablanca, faced something harsher: condemnation by the U.S. Congress itself. 11. Ingrid Bergman, America's angel, denounced by Congress. In 1940s, America, Ingrid Bergman was the embodiment of purity. Star of Casablanca, 1942, and The Bells of St. Mary's, 1945, she was the nation's angel. But in 1949, she left her doctor husband Peter Lindstrom for Italian director Roberto Rossellini, becoming pregnant before divorce papers were finalized. To conservative America, it was unforgivable. The backlash exploded. The Los Angeles Examiner called it a slap in the face of American morality. In Congress, Senator Edwin C. Johnson denounced Bergman as a tool of evil and a destroyer of family values. Hollywood shut its doors. She fled to Europe, working only in small Italian films. In 1956, Bergman returned with Anastasia. The film triumphed, earning her and Oscar Hollywood's belated forgiveness after 7 years of exile. Her story showed how Hollywood could crown a star an angel, then cast her into hell for one forbidden romance. While Bergman was condemned publicly, another screen idol, Rock Hudson, was forced to live his entire life behind a mask constructed by Hollywood. 12. Rock Hudson. The superstar forced into marriage to hide his sexuality. In the 1950s, Rock Hudson was the ideal American man, tall, handsome, with a smile that melted millions. Starring opposite Doris Day in romantic comedies, he became Hollywood's dream hero. But behind the image, Hudson was gay, a truth the industry saw as deadly to his career. In 1955, Confidential magazine threatened to expose him. Immediately, Universal Pictures and manager Henry Wilson staged a sham marriage with Phyllis Gates Hudson's secretary. The rushed Santa Barbara wedding was photographed, but it was pure theater. The marriage lasted 3 years, then quietly ended. Privately, Hudson held parties in Beverly Hills where he could be himself. The press remained silent, knowing one wrong headline could destroy Hollywood's golden boy. Not until 1985, when Hudson publicly revealed he had AIDS, did the wall collapse. Fans were stunned not only by the illness, but by the truth one of cinema's great romantic idols had lived in hiding for decades just to survive. Hudson wasn't alone. Another TV icon created not just a fake marriage, but an entire fictional family to mask his real life, Raymond Burr, beloved as Perry Mason. 13. Raymond Burr, inventing wives and children to conceal his true self. Audiences of the 1950s adored Perry Mason, with Raymond Burr as the upright lawyer who always fought for justice. On screen, he was the perfect family man. Off-screen, Burr told heartbreaking tales to reporters: a young wife killed in a plane crash, a son dead of illness, another marriage ended by cancer. The stories were so convincing that the public pitied and admired him even more. But after Burr's death in 1993, Los Angeles Times. Journalists traced the records and found none of it was true. No wives, no children. His family never existed. The reason emerged: Burr lived with his male partner, Robert Benavides. In an era when homosexuality was condemned, Burr invented a tragic family life to shield his reputation. Audiences realized he hadn't just acted on screen, his whole life was a performance until the very end. And just as Burr lived under the mask of a fake family Hollywood giant, Spencer Tracy hid a real love affair, one that lasted 26 years without the public ever knowing. 14. Spencer Tracy. 26 years hiding a forbidden love affair with Katharine Hepburn. Spencer Tracy, twice an Oscar winner, was seen as the epitome of a model Catholic man, a faithful husband, a devoted father, a principled star. The American press called him the soul of the silver screen. But behind the scenes of Hollywood, everyone knew he had a secret relationship that lasted 26 years with Katharine Hepburn, the legendary actress. They first met on the set of Woman of the Year 1942. The spark ignited instantly, but Tracy never divorced his wife because of his religious beliefs. Hepburn accepted becoming the woman in the shadows, quietly visiting film sets, caring for Tracy when he was ill, then disappearing before the press could notice. This love story only became public after Tracy's death in 1967. Hepburn recalled in an interview it was a love that was never allowed to shine. To the public, Tracy remained forever the perfect man. Behind the curtain, he lived a parallel life with a forbidden love. If Spencer Tracy chose to love in silence, then Clark Gable, the king of Hollywood, chose bitter silence, letting his own daughter grow up under the cover of adoption. 15. Clark Gable and Loretta Young. The biological daughter turned into an adopted child. Clark Gable, the star of Gone with the Wind, was celebrated as the king of Hollywood. In 1935, while filming The Call of the Wild with Loretta Young, a renowned actress famous for her modesty, the two had a brief affair. The result was that Loretta became pregnant. In the strict society of that time, an unmarried star having a child was unthinkable. Loretta disappeared from Hollywood for several months, then returned with a little girl introduced as her adopted daughter named Judy. The press back then, from photoplay to Motion Picture Herald, praised this humanitarian act, never suspecting that Judy was in fact the biological daughter of Loretta and Gable. Gable never publicly acknowledged her. Judy grew up with doubts about her origins. It wasn't until she published her memoir, Uncommon Knowledge, in 1994 that the secret was revealed, shocking the public. One of the most spectacular cover-ups of an illegitimate child in Hollywood history, it proved that sometimes stardom is built on bitter lies. Clark Gable chose lifelong silence, but Gary Cooper, the icon of the straight-shooting cowboy, chose a different path, one even crueler, forcing his young lover to have an abortion in secret. 16. Gary Cooper forcing his young lover to abort in secret. In the eyes of the public during the 1940s and 1950s, Gary Cooper was Hollywood's golden man, tall, calm, with a steady gaze. After the resounding success of High Noon 1952, he was hailed as the ideal American man, honorable, courageous, unyielding. But behind the curtain of fame lay a secret that stained the image of this Western hero with cruelty. In 1950, already a husband and father, Cooper fell into an affair with Patricia Neal, a young actress in her early 20s who had risen to fame after The Fountainhead. Between lavish Beverly Hills parties and Paramount late-night shoots, their passionate romance unfolded. When Neal unexpectedly became pregnant, Cooper panicked. He feared that the press, from Hollywood Reporter to Los Angeles Examiner, would sniff it out, and the scandal could bury his career at its peak. According to Neal's memoir, published decades later, Cooper exerted relentless pressure, forcing her to have an abortion in secret at a clinic in New York. "It was the most painful decision of my life," Neal wrote, "a ghost I carried with me until the end of my days." While Cooper continued to bask in glory, Neal suffered mental torment, fell into depression, and was hospitalized multiple times. The story only surfaced when both were past their prime, but it left an indelible stain, a screen hero who in real life acted like a coward, willing to sacrifice love and even an unborn life just to protect his stardom. As audiences began questioning the so-called role models of movie stars, Hollywood witnessed an even more shocking scandal: Mary Astor and the infamous diary that turned a courtroom into a theater, exposing a star's intimate life. 17. Mary Astor. The Purple Diary reveals bedroom secrets. Mary Astor, the famed actress of The Maltese Falcon 1941, seemed destined to be remembered for her elegance and acting talent. But in 1936, during a custody battle with ex-husband Franklin Thorpe, Hollywood erupted over a private diary of hers used as evidence. In what the press called the Purple Diary, Astor detailed extramarital affairs with powerful figures from playwright George S. Kaufman to a prominent New York politician. Los Angeles Examiner and New York Daily News rushed to print excerpts. Newspaper sales soared, even surpassing coverage of Europe's looming war. The Los Angeles courtroom became a theater, with the public devouring every salacious detail. In the end, Astor won custody, but her career never escaped the shadow of that diary. She continued acting, but in the eyes of many, Mary Astor would forever be tied to one of the most scandalous sex diaries in history. While Mary Astor lived her whole life with that purple legacy, Patty Duke faced a twisted bloodline scandal that stunned Hollywood, and even her own son decades later. 18. Patty Duke, a star, pregnant without knowing who the father was. In the early 1970s, Hollywood was shocked when Patty Duke, the darling who had won an Oscar as a teenager for The Miracle Worker, suddenly became pregnant. The problem was, even Patty herself was unsure who the father was. The press reported the story relentlessly, naming 3 men in the swirl: John Astin, star of The Addams Family; Desi Arnaz Jr., son of the legendary couple Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz; and Michael Tell, a journalist and musician of little fame whom Patty impulsively married for 13 days before separating, never spending a single day living together. The whole of America followed it like a soap opera. People magazine ran the series Who is the Father? Late-night shows turned it into a joke while Patty sank into crisis. She eventually told her son Sean that his father was John Astin, whom she later married. But the rumors never died. It wasn't until the 1990s, when DNA testing became common, that Sean discovered the truth: Michael Tell, the least likely candidate, was his biological father. The story became a bitter testament that fate can sometimes be more ironic than the best screenwriters. From Patty Duke's bloodline, shock audiences remembered Barbara Stanwyck, the steel woman of film noir, who in real life coldly cut all ties with the child she once adopted. 19. Barbara Stanwyck cutting off her adopted son completely. Barbara Stanwyck, dubbed the Queen of Film Noir, was one of the most powerful women of 1940s Hollywood. She once moved the press to tears by adopting a boy named Dion, turning it into a fairy tale in Tinseltown. The public hailed her as a devoted mother, balancing motherhood and a stellar career. But as Dion grew up, their relationship fractured. Some said Stanwyck was too strict, too focused on her career, while Dion felt abandoned. In 1951, when asked by a Los Angeles Times reporter about her son, Stanwyck coldly replied, "I have no son." The statement caused a sensation, spread across headlines, and shattered her image as the ideal mother. By the time Stanwyck died in 1990, she left her vast fortune to friends and charities. Dion received only $5,000, a token amount, a symbolic erasure of their bond. Audiences who once admired her on screen had to swallow the bitterness of her real life. If Barbara Stanwyck exposed the chilling gap between screen and reality, Jerry Lewis, America's king of comedy, revealed an even greater paradox: a man worshipped for his charity, yet who denied his own blood. 20. Jerry Lewis hailed for charity but denying his own daughter. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Americans eagerly awaited Jerry Lewis's annual telethon. For hours on national TV, he sang, wept, and pleaded, raising millions for disabled children. The New York Times called him the father of the unfortunate, and Time magazine once put his face on its cover for his compassion. But behind the glitter was a family story that chilled the nation. Susan, his illegitimate daughter, publicly claimed Lewis never acknowledged or supported her, leaving her to grow up in poverty. Worse, with Ronald, one of his adopted sons, Lewis, even erased his name from the will as if the relationship had never existed. In 2017, when Lewis died, scandal erupted again. 6 of his legal children were cut out of the inheritance, receiving nothing. USA Today and CNN both asked, how could a man who begged compassion for millions of children be so cold to his own family? The image of the saint of charity became a paradox. Jerry Lewis was praised for generosity to the world, but to those who bore his name, he left only emptiness. And this very contrast made audiences shudder when comparing him to another case, Marlon Brando. Unlike Jerry Lewis, Brando did not abandon his children in silence. He let his 11 children be consumed by scandal, violence, and tragedy, turning his family into a real-life horror darker than any film he starred in. 21. Marlon Brando, the great star, tied to the tragedy of his 11 children. Marlon Brando, legend of The Godfather, was famous not only for acting genius, but for a chaotic private life. He fathered at least 11 children from marriages, affairs, and adoptions from across continents. The press dubbed them a legendary clan, but inside it was a relentless tragedy. In 1990, Hollywood was shaken when Christian Brando, his eldest son, shot and killed Dog Drala, the boyfriend of Cheyenne, his half-sister, at the family's Mulholland Drive mansion in Los Angeles. The trial dragged on for months, dominating the front pages of Los Angeles Times and People magazine. Brando on screen, the powerful godfather, was in reality a helpless father weeping in court as the verdict was read. The pain didn't stop there. Cheyenne, his Tahitian daughter, couldn't bear the shock of losing her lover. She spiraled into deep depression, was hospitalized in Papeete, then took her own life in 1995 at age 25. The tragedy crushed Brando, who withdrew to his Beverly Hills estate, slowly cutting ties with Hollywood. His life became living proof that even the greatest star is powerless against family chaos. And as Brando collapsed under the weight of his children, the public learned that even a gentleman as perfect as Leslie Howard had left behind a secret legacy. 22. Leslie Howard, the gentleman of Gone with the Wind and his secret illegitimate child. In Gone with the Wind, 1939, Leslie Howard played Ashley Wilkes, the epitome of a faithful, elegant man. In real life, Howard was revered as a gentleman of England. But decades after his death, archival documents in London revealed a shocking truth. In 1924, at age 31, Leslie Howard had a secret affair with a young woman in London. The result was an illegitimate child immediately sent away to be raised elsewhere to avoid scandal. Howard never publicly admitted it, continuing to cultivate his image as a devoted husband and father to his official family. When he died in a plane crash in 1943, Howard was celebrated as a spiritual symbol of World War II. But personal letters and diaries later revealed the truth. A fleeting romance had left an unspoken trace in history. Even the perfect gentleman had his shadows, reminding us that legends are only human. If Leslie Howard left a secret love child, Jean Tierney, a breathtaking beauty, had to live her life with the pain caused by an irresponsible fan. 23. Jean Tierney, a fan, caused the birth of her disabled daughter. In the 1940s, Hollywood crowned Jean Tierney as the perfect muse with a Face Life magazine called the most beautiful in cinema. But at her peak, she endured a nightmare few could imagine. In June 1943, Jean attended a USO event at the Hollywood Canteen to boost the morale of soldiers heading to war. Amid the crowd, a female fan broke through the barrier to hug and kiss Jean, despite being infected with rubella and under quarantine. That brief contact infected Jean during her pregnancy. When her daughter Daria was born, doctors delivered devastating news: the baby was deaf, partially blind, and mentally impaired. In the glamorous society of the time, this was a stain studios wanted to bury. Jean had to place her daughter in a special facility in Connecticut while she returned to the cameras, smiling as if nothing had happened. The Hollywood press continued to hail Jean as a happiness icon, never knowing that after filming she secretly visited her daughter in tears. Years later, in her memoir, Jean confessed, "I spent my whole life living with that moment." This tragedy was not just personal pain, but a Hollywood curse. One fan's reckless act could doom a star's entire life. And while Jean crumbled under her child's suffering, silent film legend Lon Chaney Sr. lived, haunted by another family secret that shaped his life. 24. Lon Chaney Sr., the man who hid his deaf-mute parents out of shame. Lon Chaney Sr. was nicknamed the Man of 1,000 Faces for his extraordinary makeup and body expression in The Phantom of the Opera 1925 and The Hunchback of Notre Dame 1923. Audiences thought this talent was a gift, but it actually came from a secret he considered a lifelong shame. Born in 1883 in Colorado, Chaney grew up in a family shunned by society. Both parents were deaf-mute. At the time, such families were stigmatized as genetically flawed. Lon grew up in silence, communicating only with sign language and glances. Instead of pride, he carried crushing shame. That fear made Chaney hide the truth. Entering Hollywood, he built a false biography, dodging all questions about family. Even when he first married, he kept it hidden until his wife Cleva discovered the truth upon meeting his parents. Shocked, she attempted suicide by poison on stage in 1913, a scandal that rocked the industry. Chaney's career soared, but he lived behind a double mask: on screen, the Man of 1,000 Faces; in life, the man who hid his roots. His childhood of silence and shame shaped him into an actor who spoke with his eyes, but also into a man forever fleeing his past. Lon Chaney left a magnificent legacy, but his story chills the audience. Sometimes extraordinary talent is born from secrets its bearer would rather die than reveal. Looking back at these 24 secrets, it becomes clear Hollywood's spotlight was often just a curtain hiding family tragedies no one wanted to mention. The people the world once worshipped lived in lies, pain, even despair inside their own homes. It makes us wonder, is fame truly worth it if the price is happiness and peace? And you, what story haunts you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to keep uncovering more shocking Hollywood secrets, Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because behind the stage lights, countless dark truths are still waiting to be told.